Today, we are joined by Mickey Addison, who has actually been with us before. And today, we're talking about leading leaders. Good morning, Mickey.
Hey, good morning, Tori. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's actually almost San Diego-like weather here.
Oh, is it? You're in
Yeah,
San Antonio?
I'm in San Antonio, right?
Okay. Lucky, lucky.
Yeah,
Must,
right. We have a brief spring before it starts to bake your eyeballs.
yeah. So enjoy while it lasts, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Mickey actually has a book, and the title of his book is called Leading Leaders. And that's what we're talking about today. So it's about empowering, inspiring, and motivating teams. And teams is something we don't talk about a lot, but this can actually pertain to anyone because if you think about it, you're always working at a team as a team in the real estate industry because you're working with lenders and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to focus on leading leaders and how to build the perfect team and how to work together. So in Mickey's book, he focuses on five main things when talking about leading leaders. Those five things are integrity, respect, teamwork, leaders lead, and the little things matter. So we're going to kind of go through each one of those and talk about it. So let's start out with the first one. Mickey, why is integrity such an important foundation when becoming a successful leader?
Integrity has to be the cornerstone of anything we are, not just as a leader, but as a person, right? Because, and especially as an entrepreneur and in the real estate business, if you don't have trust, if you don't have the trust of your clients, if you don't have the trust with your fellow agents and the brokers, and the people that you deal with, you're not going to get anywhere. And that trust is built on your personal sense of ethics and your personal integrity. It's absolutely vital. We do business with other people, and we don't do business with entities, or you might write a check to a company name, but you're really doing business with Sue or Joe or Bob. And so you've got to have that sense of where people can trust you. And there's a saying, and I'm going to paraphrase it from the Bible, but if I can't trust you in small things, how can I trust you in big things? And so I use the example in the book, if somebody's going to take drink your last Coke out of the refrigerator, can I really trust them with finances? Or if somebody's going to be, pilfering office supplies, can I really trust them with the big deals? And so, that sense of trust and that sense of integrity, personal sense of integrity, both in being true to yourself as well as demonstrating that to your peers and to the people that you work with and work for, is just absolutely vital to establishing good relationships that people can work with you.
Well, and that's a lot of when people are choosing their real estate agent or when you're choosing your lender or anything in this industry, you're basing it on trust. So it's important to have that integrity. How can a leading leader create a culture of respect? So that's kind of piggybacking on that last question.
Right. Yeah. Let me circle back to integrity real quick, and then I'll bridge to respect. So, there's the personal sense of, hey, I can trust you as a person, but professional communities take on this idea of integrity as a community. And so when we have community sense of, professional ethics in a community, there's a real estate agent and a real estate broker's code of ethics, right? And so when somebody signs up and goes through gets their realtor license or gets their brokerage license, just by virtue of getting that license, you're signing up to the idea that you're going to follow this professional system of ethics. And that's found in every kind of profession. We're familiar with the Hippocratic Oath in the medical profession, first do no harm. It's probably the oldest one, but colleges and universities have honor codes. I'm a Texas Aggie, so an Aggie doesn't lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. That's our honor code, and we try to live up to that as Aggies. And so that's taking that personal sense of ethics and then making it a system that we can live by as professionals. And that breeds right into creating a culture of respect around you. So with integrity being your first step, your foundation, and then systemizing that in a professional system of ethics, then you have to think about, okay, how do I relate that to other people? Because so integrity is really about me. Respect is about showing how am I treating others. And so there's two or three different ways to approach that. One way is obviously just interpersonal relationships with people. I'm going to treat you with respect because you're a human being, and every human being deserves to be treated with respect. I don't have to agree with everything that you said or thought in your life, but I have to be, I got to be nice, right? And so we're living in a world now, especially this social media world, where people hide behind a screen and they write reviews. And I'm sure there's no real estate agents out there that have ever gotten a bad review from somebody, but it happens from time to time where you make somebody mad, or somebody just wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. You did nothing wrong, but you get this terrible thing put out there in the world about you. And people feel empowered to do that behind a screen because there's this sense of anonymity. And so that culture of respect, of recognizing that I don't have to agree with Mickey, but I have to treat him or her with the respect that every human being is due. That's where you start, right? Mm-hmm. And then you go into the how do I earn respect? Well, I can earn respect by the way I relate to others and the way I treat them, and then my work ethic. So part of that goes into when you're working on a team, you're working under a broker's license and you're working with a group of agents. Am I withholding things, or am I referring people? Am I looking for the person who's going to give me the answer that I want on the appraisal, or is going to give me the fastest, cheapest, or maybe the best quality work if some repairs have to be done? Or am I looking for somebody who really can do the work? Am I contributing to the team? And that's how you get respect, right? And then it permeates the organization. When people start treating other people with respect, and you require that, right? So you walk in the lunchroom and two of your coworkers are gossiping about a third person. You have a decision to make. You can sit down at the table and join in, right? You can put your glasses down here. I got a prop here. So you can pull your glasses down and glower over your glasses. Probably not a good idea either. Or you can say, hey, look, that's not cool. I don't know what so-and-so did or didn't do, but us talking about him or her behind her back, that's not cool. And, and the kinds of things you bring into the workplace and the kinds of language that you use, all that permeates. So here's a quick story. I remember it was a delayed flight, some coming from somewhere, but it was on the day before Thanksgiving, and everybody wanted to get home. It was flights were being delayed for thunderstorms and snow, and it was just a miserable. And I noticed that for one reason or another, the lead flight attendants, they really looked just beat down. And they're standing there at the door and they're doing their job and they're being courteous, but you can tell it's been a hard day for them. And somebody ahead of us gave this flight attendant, as he got on board, he gave her a big smile and said, hi, how are you doing? He looked her in the eye and greeted her. And that started a chain reaction down the line. Everyone started greeting this flight attendant as they got on board. And her whole countenance changed. It went from being this drawn down, just beat down, to suddenly she was up and awake and alive because people were treating her with respect. And all it took was that one person. And the whole flight was like that. I heard, yes, please, no, yes, please, thank you, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. People being nice, people helping other people with their bags. And that one person, when he looked at the flight attendant and made her smile and looked at her like a human being who I recognize that you've had a rough day, and let me not add to that, right? That permeated everything. And so that's how leaders can do that in a workplace, is to, you start by setting the example, and then you kind of require that kind of behavior from your coworkers and from your teammates. Long answer to a short question.
Yeah, but it's treat others the way you want to be treated. I mean, people teach their kids that at such a young age, and they teach that in the schools. That's pretty much what it is. If you're going to treat people with respect, the respect's going to come back and it's going to be reciprocated towards you. Maybe not right then in that time at that place, but it will come back to you because people will recognize that you're a respectful person. So
right. Yeah, exactly right.
And with what you said with that flight attendant, we always talk about this. No matter what kind of day you're having, someone could be having a bad day, and you could do something so simple like that guy did, and you just make their entire day.
Right.
So, so she probably left and did the same thing. Maybe she walked out of that plane and said, "Oh, that person looks like they're having a bad day. Let me say hi to them." So it's just one of those things. It's it just happens.
Yeah, it's like ripples in a pond. Yeah. So can I tell one more story? This is a great story. It's not mine. It's Zig Ziglar's, and motivational speaker Zig Ziglar, and he's written, dozens and dozens of books. But he tells a story about Mr. Big, who's a CEO, and he makes a big speech that, hey, we're going to work late and we're going to take shorter lunches. and he gives this big speech. And so a few weeks later, he's at a lunch meeting coming back from the club, and he's running late. So now he's speeding to get back, and he gets pulled over and gets a ticket. And now he's mad. And so, he really lets the cop have it. Don't you have anything else better to do than, I'm just trying to get back to work. And the cop said, yep, but here's your ticket anyway. And so Mr. Big gets back to the office, and he walks in and he slams his stuff down at his desk because he's mad. And the secretary comes in, and she has work to do, and greets him, and then goes back out again. And then the sales guy, he calls the sales guy in, and he lets the sales guy have it, and the sales guy is like, hey, I'm working my best. He goes, if you don't close this deal by the end of the week, you're through. You haven't had a lifetime commitment at this place, and really lets him have it. So now the sales guy's mad. And the sales guy goes back and he has a similar conversation with his secretary about getting some letters out. And haven't you gotten these letters out? And what's going on with this? And now she's mad. And so she's busy. So she hands the letters off to the receptionist and said, you don't ever do anything over here except answer the phone and talk on the greet people and talk on the phone. Why don't you do these letters? And it's not really her job, but she'll do them anyway. And she gets them out. But now she's mad, and she gets home and she sees her boy, and her boy comes in, and he's gotten torn jeans from playing outside. And she tells him, hasn't mama told you many times not to play outside in your school clothes, and get upstairs so that's your dinner. And upstairs, the boy goes, and right as he gets to his room, the cat walks in front of him, and he gives the cat a big old boot, kicks him. And so Zig Ziglar poses this question. He says, wouldn't it have been simpler if Mr. Big had just gone to that receptionist's house and kicked that cat and left out all those people in the middle?
Yeah.
So, the question that stuck with me, and it reminds me, whose cat am I kicking today, right? And it just reminds me that these ripples in the way we treat people, I don't want to be kicking somebody else's cat.
Yeah, I love that story.
That's a good
story.
I wish it was mine.
I know. It's still a good one. It's a good one to share. And that kind of brings us to our next question. So that's one way not to build a good team that's going to work together is to go around yelling at everyone. But can you give advice on how to develop a good team that does work together well?
Yeah, it's, obviously it's not a one size fits all, and there's not really a formula, but so I think you have to start with, first of all, the leader of a team has to be authentic, and you have to be invested, right? So, very often, because we're such a distributed group of people in any business, but especially the real estate business, we're all individual entrepreneurs, right? And so everybody's outgoing, you're working on your own schedule. And sometimes it's hard to see the people that are around you as anything other than a distraction. But if you're the leader, you have to be invested in them, and you got to understand what's going on in their lives. And the only way to understand that is to be invested in them and get to know them as people. And it doesn't mean intrude on their private lives. But, if Mickey comes to work, if Mickey's normally a high performing agent, and then suddenly the last 2 weeks, he's coming to work unshaven, or maybe he's looking a little ragged, or bleary eyed, or rather than, you have a choice to make. You can yell at him and call him in and go, Mickey, you're not performing. What's going on? Or you can call him into your office, or go to his place and sit down with him and go, hey, I know something's not right with you. What's going on? And find out what's going on with them, because most of the time when somebody's performance falls off, there's a good reason. And now, not everybody, obviously. Sometimes you have to help somebody find a new line of work, but even that can be handled gently. And if somebody's not a criminal, there's no need to treat them that way. So start off with being invested in your people. The other thing is, everyone has their niche. So in the real estate business, maybe somebody's really good at high-end homes. Maybe somebody does the bargain, the tract homes well. Somebody else is really good at commercial properties. Somebody else does, all they really do is help people find rentals, and that's where their passion is. So helping somebody find their niche, if I've got the person who's really good at commercial real estate and selling commercial properties, and I put them into high-end luxury home sales and tell them, hey, go work this area. Well, I've set this person up for failure, maybe. Now, maybe I'm helping them break out, but maybe they're not good at luxury homes because they don't like doing that, and it's going to show in their performance. So part of helping building a high-performing team is knowing your people well enough to put them where their strengths are. In the engineering world where I come from, sometimes people are not good at dealing with people, and they would rather just sit in front of their computer and work on their AutoCAD or their spreadsheets all day long. And so taking that person and make them client facing is a terrible idea. Vice versa. If I've got somebody who's, okay with the numbers and okay with the engineering, but is really good at building relationships, I don't want to bury them in a cubicle in the back of the office. I want them up front talking to the clients. So helping them, understanding what's going on in people's lives and then helping people find their niche, I think those are probably the two biggest keys.
I think that too is kind of what I take even with my own job and taking care of 1,200 agents is it's important to be professional, but be personable at the same time. So you can do both, but you also need to know how to differentiate both because you don't want to mix those professional and personal lives. But when you're working with your clients, it's good to know a little bit about them and it's good for them to know a little bit about you too.
Right.
And that's the same thing if you're building a team. You want to know your team. And our vice president, Jessica, she will reach out to the agents personally. And she doesn't have to do that, but she does because she's trying to build this great team. And more importantly, we look at it as a family too. So, just having that personable relationship and being able to know, you know what, my VP called me yesterday. That doesn't happen, especially in a big company like Addison James. We have 1,200 agents. We want to try and build these relationships with everyone. And you should have that same mindset when you're building these relationships with this team you're trying to grow, no matter how big or how small it is.
That's right. And I think that works across professional lines too. So not just within the brokerage or the office, but also, you work, like you said earlier, you work with appraisers, you work with people that are going to come in and do home and facility inspections. You work with people that are going to come in and do repairs. And, we just recently bought a home about a year ago, and our real estate agent was very, very connected. I should say the buyers or the seller's real estate agent was very connected. But you know what? She invested in us as the buyers as well, and she didn't have to. But she would always offer, hey, here's a list. If you're looking for somebody to do such and such, you're new in town. Here's a list of people, that I have worked with before and I trust. Choose whoever you like, obviously. But and so realizing that we weren't just a commission check to her, but that we were human beings that, and we're still friends. So we've been out to dinner and she built, we built a relationship based on that initial relationship. So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and that kind of brings it back full circle almost. I know we're not quite done, but it comes back to that foundation of trust.
Right, so, exactly.
When you say that leaders lead, can you tell us what you mean by that exactly?
Yeah, so basically it means if you've been given authority, use it. And if you give someone authority, let them use it. And so in the Air Force, we used to say, don't delegate up, right? And very often, I don't want to say very often, sometimes, especially with new leaders, if they're timid, then they will tend to say, well, I don't know if I should make this decision or not. I'll just let Jessica make the decision, or I'll let Tori make the decision. And that's not what Jessica or Tori hired me to do, right? They hired me to make decisions. And so it's okay to seek advice. I'm not saying people shouldn't ever seek advice from more seasoned or senior leaders in the firm. But if you've been given authority, most firms I've dealt with are in the ask forgiveness mode, right? So most bosses would much rather you make a decision, so long as it's not illegal, immoral, or fattening, as my mother would say. But most bosses would rather that you make a decision, and if it's wrong, they'll help you walk it back. But what they really don't want to do is give you a bunch of authority and then have you in their office every 15 minutes asking what to do. That's not being a leader. And it goes the same way in reverse. If Tori tells Mickey, hey, I need you to go do X, Y, and Z, and then you're checking on me every 15 minutes, or you tell me, go come up with 3 suggestions and then come back and I'm going to make the decision. Well, you haven't empowered me, right? What you've done is just turned me into a flunky, and nobody likes that. That's a much of a demotivator. So you never want to give people more authority than they should have, either because of their abilities or because of where they are in the organization or their seasoning or whatever. But if you give somebody authority, then back them up. And that's what I used to tell people when I would do, when I was a senior commander, was, hey, look, I want you to make a decision. I can't make all the decisions. Make a decision. And if it's a bad one, we will walk it back. If you're worried that somebody's going to get hurt or we're going to lose a bunch of money, then come talk to me, or seek some advice and counsel from somebody else. But by and large, if it's a bad decision, we'll walk it back. If it's a good decision, I'll support you. If it's a bad decision, I'll support you, and we'll still walk it back. But that's really what leaders lead means. Leaders are hired to lead, not to, and that's why I use the term very specifically. We use the term in business manager when we really mean leader. And manager comes from the Industrial Revolution, where we were suddenly not, we were managing processes. If you think about managers manage things and processes. We lead people. Leadership's about real estate. I mean, leadership is about a relationship, and about knowing your people, and about authority, and about guidance and coaching, and sometimes being directive. Management is about efficiency and process and things. And so if you separate those two things in your head, even if your title is manager, remember, I manage things. I can move things around the table, but I really lead people, and they're both equally important, but leadership is that's the people business.
That's such a great mindset to have. It's making me think. My brain is just like completely doing a 360 right now, to think of yourself as a leader rather than I manage these. You don't want to manage people.
Right.
That's just not, I mean, that's not fun for anyone to manage someone. And then going back on, if you are that leader and you're leading these people and they do make a decision without coming to you first, then you know you're being a good leader because they're making those good decisions. So even if they make a bad decision, you lead them and teach them how to make better decisions for the next time.
Exactly.
And that's how people grow. People aren't going to grow by being micromanaged.
No, exactly right. Yeah, and you want to grow the people that come after you. I mean, if you really care about the organization that you're a part of, and you care about the people that are around you, then you want everybody to be successful. None of us are going to be employed by the same company, even if you spend a lifetime in the same company. At some point, you're going to retire and go grow cabbage or whatever. So if you care about it, you want to grow people to come after you who are equally, if not more, talented and able as you are.
And then our final question, we're going to talk about details a little bit. So even if you're the greatest leader in the world, you can't avoid all the details. So how do you pinpoint what details are important, even if they're the very minor details?
Right. So that's a really hard question to answer. I'll answer that by give you some examples. So let me tell a story first about why details are important and the difference between an unimportant and an important detail. So back many years ago, the Concorde, which was a supersonic passenger transport, crashed in Paris. And it crashed because 8 months prior, somebody had installed a piece on an engine on another airplane incorrectly in Houston.
Oh, wow.
And so what had happened is that piece had fallen off the jet. The Concorde, carrying 100 people, about 110 people plus crew, had rolled over it, busted the tire. The shards of the tire went up and blew up punctured the fuel tanks. The fuel ran out of the jet into the afterburners as they were taking off and caught the whole airplane on fire. And it crashed into a hotel off the end of the runway, killed 113 people. Now, none of us here are going to be flying supersonic jets, right? But we all have a chance to think about which details are important. So in that case, some maintenance supervisor at a maintenance company for another airline in Houston, somebody did not pay attention and run the checklist about making sure all these things were installed correctly. That's an important detail. Now, was the CEO of that company involved in that? Absolutely not. So the CEO needed to be looking at things like, how many hours are people working? What's the work conditions in the maintenance hangar? How is the training and the competency of the people that are working for me? How do I measure that? How do I know? Do I trust the leaders that work for me and the leaders who work for them to be doing the same things? And do I instill a culture of checking up on the appropriate small details throughout the company? So Truett Cathy, who came up with Chick-fil-A, if you've ever been to a Chick-fil-A, whenever you say thank you, they always say my pleasure, every single time. And so that was Truett Cathy's idea. He wanted people to feel like they were in somebody's home, kind of the my pleasure thing. And so he told all his people at the big meeting, I want y'all to be saying my pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. And that was an important small detail to him. Well, some franchise owners didn't get the message. And so Truett Cathy was spot checking. He would call the franchise and then, of course, not identify himself. He'd call them up, and if he didn't hear my pleasure, now he didn't go back to that franchise owner specifically, but at the next meeting he went, I'm not hearing it, and I'm checking. and they got the word. I worked for another senior leader at the Pentagon, and we would get, as you can imagine, at the 3-star level in what we used to call the E-ring, or what is called the E-ring of the Pentagon, the volumes of paperwork that come through, the E-ring, the headquarters Air Force. And so we would get 300 and 400 page documents that had to be read in a couple of days, and approved or whatever. And so I had a boss, and he was, first of all, he read a lot. I mean, sometimes he'd get there. I got there at 5:30 in the morning. He would get there sometimes before me, and he'd been there for an hour, reading and catching up. But he didn't read everything. No human could. But he would go through and spot check. And so pretty soon people understood that the entire document had to be perfect, because they never knew when Mr. Smith was going to go down to page 218 of a 400-page document and read it and look for a grammar mistake. And so I tell you those two stories to say this: the leader has to understand the process top to bottom. Doesn't mean they have to know all the gory details top to bottom, but they have to understand what the product is supposed to look like, what the process, what the big rocks of the process should look like, and that tells you what to spot check. So another example to illustrate my point: when I was in the Air Force, I was in the public works, civil engineer world, and so a lot of tradesmen, craftsmen working in shops doing construction and heavy repair work. So what's important in that world is safety and training, right? Training competency. And so I would spot check things like cleanliness, and I would go look at the bulletin board. And if the bulletin board was faded because they had changed out the policy letters, or the chaplain's picture was 3 chaplains ago who'd PCS'd, who transferred out, that was an indicator to me that maybe that supervisor in that shop wasn't paying attention to the right details and wasn't taking care of things that are important, like training and safety. If it's not clean, and so on a process like a broker or a team leader for real estate agents, what's important? What's important is the integrity of the process, completeness of paperwork, making sure that what you tell clients and how you advertise clients' properties is accurate. Right. Mm-hmm. So, if I was in that business, I would be spot checking occasionally. I'd pull up some MLS listings and I'd go look at the properties and see if I agree with what the real estate agent had written in the property. And I mean, obviously that's a weak example because I'm not a real estate agent, but the idea is you're looking at the details that matter. And in that particular example, that's a detail that's client facing. So you want it to be right.
Mm-hmm. And this goes, just to kind of go back on the past question, because we were talking about managing and doing too much managing. This isn't like what I would call micromanaging. This is right. Just checking in is kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah. I don't mean, and checking in is a good way to say it, because it's not the same as checking up, right? Because some people would say, what are you doing checking on my stuff? No. It should never be a surprise, right? The agents should all know what's expected of them, as far as, and this goes to, obviously in any business. Your performance measures, the things that are important to the boss, should never be a secret, and they should never be a surprise to the people. Just like your performance evaluation at the end of the year should never be a surprise. You should know exactly what you're getting even before you've seen it, because you know what's expected of you, and you know whether you've met those measures or exceeded them or not. And so it's the same thing. If I tell, in that particular case of the MLS listings, if I tell the agents who are working with me on the team, hey, look, accuracy of these listings and these advertisements are really important to us because it speaks to our integrity as a firm. And they need to sell the property. Obviously, there's salesmanship involved, but they have to be accurate. And so, if it says it's a 5,000 square foot house and I show up and it's 5,000 square feet, but it's a 2,000 square foot house and then a trailer in the back that's another 2,500 square feet. Well, that's, you know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, technically that's correct, but so, right. And so spot checking on small details is how leaders make sure that their direction is being clear. And maybe there's a good reason. Yeah, if it's not right, maybe it's because I wasn't clear as a leader. Right. And so you have to, there's a saying, I can't remember who said, I think it was Colin Powell that said it, that said that if there's something wrong in your organization, if there's a problem, start looking for the solution beginning in concentric circles around your desk. So in other words, think about, okay, what direction did I give people? What did I tell them? Did I tell them that these listings needed to be really, accurate? Or if I didn't, well, then that's on me. And then so you're spot checking yourself as well as the process.
Oh, I always do that. As soon as I see something, if I notice something wasn't done, I'm like, maybe I didn't
Hmm.
delegate it.
Right.
And I always check myself first because there's been times where I'll be like, you didn't do this. But
Hmm.
then I look back and I'm like, well, it was me first.
Right.
Which
Exactly.
can happen, which can
Hmm.
happen when you have a lot on your plate. It's probably more common for that to happen, but before you go blame someone else, spot check yourself first.
Yeah.
And then if you did do it, then you can take on that leadership role and go let them know this is.
Yep.
But if you didn't do it, then you need to evaluate yourself first.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly right. So, talking about building a culture of respect,
Mm-hmm.
how much do you respect a leader who is willing to admit when he or she is wrong and made a
Mm-hmm.
mistake and own up to it and go, hey, look, that's on me. I got it.
Yeah.
I'm going to fix it. Rather than the leader who is okay, it's always one of you people's fault, right? Always, no matter,
Mm-hmm.
and we know who messed up. We all know. So you're
Everyone
not
knows.
hiding anything. We know, when I was in the Air Force and I screwed something up, um, if I tried to blame it on somebody else, all my people would have looked at me like I had three heads. They knew it was the colonel that jacked it up.
Yeah,
So, right. So I'm not fooling you're not fooling anybody when you try to blame somebody else for your mistake. So yeah.
you're just trying to fool yourself more than anything.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So Mickey's book, we have the description, or sorry, the link to your book in the description of this video. It is called Leading Leaders. If
Hmm.
I just want to make sure I get it right. It's Leading Leaders, Empowering, Inspiring, and Motivating Teams.
Right.
So if you enjoyed this broadcast, which I don't know why you wouldn't, go click on that link and you can get Mickey's book. I believe it's on Amazon.
It is on Amazon. If you search for it, it'll be Leading Leaders and then search my last name because there's a couple other books that have similar titles.
Okay.
But it's on Lulu, Amazon. It's in Barnes and Nobles. I have an ebook and print version, and there's a workbook that goes along with it as well. So
Perfect. We also have Mickey's contact information in the description of this video as well. So feel free to check out the website, contact him. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you if you have any questions or anything like that. Do you have any final last words that you want to end us with?
First of all, I really enjoy talking to you, Tori. Thanks for having me on again. I hope we get to do it again because this is really fun for me.
Yeah.
I just think that leadership is just such an important thing, and just be invested in your people, be authentic, and you'll do good.
Perfect. Well, thank you. We do appreciate you coming on, and thanks for talking to me again. So it's always a pleasure talking to you and working with you. And I always get off of these broadcasts with you, and I work better after talking to you. So I appreciate all your insight. And
Thank
I
you,
know our
Tori.
too. Next week, we will be talking with the founder of the trust-based philosophy. His name is Mark Given, and we're going to talk about negotiating like a pro. So you won't want to miss that one. That is also a topic that we don't talk about very often on these. So it's something new and something we're ready to learn about. But thanks again, Mickey, and thanks everyone for watching. And I hope everyone has a great week. Bye, everyone.